Yeah, don't drift off into nowhere. All right. Okay. That's probably going to make the outcuts, isn't it? Welcome in. We're back in the saddle for another edition of Musings from the Mountains, presented by WVSports.com. I'm Keenan Cummings, managing editor of the site.
And I'm Patrick Kotnik, staff writer for the site.
Again, if you've watched this video before or if this is your first time, I recommend you check out the work of our producer, Tyson Murray. You can check out his videos there at the link, subscribe to his page. Check all that stuff out. I do recommend it. It's some quality work.
Tremendous work.
But we got some work to talk about here, and that is in the shape of the West Virginia-Texas Tech football game. It's preview time, guys. You know what this is like. We kind of break down the game, talk about the ins, the outs, look at the matchups, and kind of boil down what we think's going to happen. Doesn't always happen, but what we think's going to happen. Think's the key word there. And get into some predictions, take your questions, all the fun stuff you've come to love on this program. Texas Tech, West Virginia, a battle of 3 and 5 teams. One thing is absolutely positive in this game. One team's getting off a losing streak. West Virginia's lost 4 in a row. Texas Tech's lost 3. Red Raiders coming off a loss to Kansas. Yes, the mighty Jayhawks. Les Miles got them. So this is a game that when you look at the calendar, look at what West Virginia has left on the schedule, I'd say you're circling this one as probably the most winnable on paper, Pat.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you there, Keenan. It's going to be interesting to see, 2 first-year head coaches going head-to-head in this matchup. Also interesting to point out that Matt Wells, Texas Tech head coach, 7-1 in his career, coming off of in games after a bye week. That one loss did come this season against Oklahoma, but when you look at this matchup, if you're West Virginia fans, yes, this is probably the most winnable, but they still got to take care of business at the end of the day.
Yeah, game at high noon on ESPN2. Anthony Becht on the call. Those Mountaineer fans out there will be excited to hear that. Consecutive games with a former Mountaineer on the call. You look at this Texas Tech team, a little bit different than what you've seen in the past. Still spread, still going to go up tempo. You remember Jet Duffy played against West Virginia last year after Alan Bowman got hurt. He's still the quarterback. He's back in that role after Alan Bowman is again dealing with injuries. Efficient passer, gets the ball out quick, can run, but doesn't run by design. A big chunk of his yards are off scramble plays, which has been a theme for West Virginia going against quarterbacks here lately. You got to find a way to kind of have an answer for that. And how West Virginia does that with a banged-up defense, I think is going to be key because you're going to have to get some stops. You're going to have to play with some momentum and try to string together a little bit of what you saw at Baylor.
Yeah, exactly, Keenan. If that defensive line for West Virginia had 8 sacks last week against Baylor, if they can be disruptive, they can be aggressive against Texas Tech, then I think West Virginia has a pretty good shot in this game. And that, it's been no easy task, especially during that tough October slate that they've had going 0-4. During that slate. But defense, they've had some bright moments against some of these high potent offenses against, Texas, against Iowa State. They held up, pretty, all right there for a half against Oklahoma, but very great game against Baylor for that unit, for Vic Koning's defense. So they can be disruptive. If they can get some pressure on Jet Duffy, then I feel like West Virginia can put themselves in a position to get a win.
So Roderick Thompson, I want to make sure I got that right. So Roderick Thompson, the running back, is a good player. Has 8 touchdowns on the year. I think the number that stands out to me above all that he's done is he makes people miss. Explosive guy. He's forced 32 missed tackles. Their other running backs forced 20. That means when he's in space, he's tough to tackle. A lot of yards after contact. It's going to be key for West Virginia to wrap up. I think that, moving forward here for West Virginia, yes, they're beat up on defense. Everyone knows that. It's played out at this point. We understand what it is. But can they get that effort weekly? That's going to be my question. Yes, you're undermanned. Yes, you're missing guys, but no one's going to feel sorry for you. You're at the stage of the season where the clock's ticking. You have 4 games left. Can you capture that same effort on defense, and can you start to slow them down a bit? Big receiver, everybody knows TJ Vasher. He's kind of their number one target. Not the most efficient when they throw to him, but he is a big play guy. They'll spread it around. They have a lot of guys to get catches. This is not a narrow passing tree. A lot of different guys will catch it. Tight ends are used. Running backs are used. They're going to get the football out quick. A lot of yards after the catch. This is a team that's going to try to exploit you in space. And like I said, they'll go up tempo a lot. It's going to be a challenge for this West Virginia defense, a little bit different than what they saw against Baylor.
And we talk about Texas Tech's 3-game losing streak. I mean, a lot of it isn't really due to the offense, to the offense's performance. It's been more their defense having some breakdowns. Now, Texas Tech's defense has been pretty dominant in the first quarter this year. They've held their opponents scoreless in 6 of 8 games this year. They've also forced a turnover. Forced a 3-and-out or a takeaway on the opening drive of 6 of 8 games this year. So Texas Tech's defense been pretty solid to start out. We've seen West Virginia at times get off to slow starts, but the problem with the Red Raiders has been big plays, allowing big plays, having some breakdowns. Really curious to see how the Red Raiders respond, especially after that whole debacle there at the end of the Kansas game. Especially coming off of a bye week, we saw what happened with what happened at the end of that Kansas game with the whole blocked field goal, lateral, and Kansas got another shot for the game-winning field goal.
Unbelievable.
Never seen anything like that before, but really curious to see how they respond. But for West Virginia, of Texas Tech being vulnerable at times to allowing big plays, can West Virginia's offense create those plays? Can they have explosive plays? I mean, at times we've seen that, especially we saw that one play last week, that long touchdown pass from Kendall to George Campbell, but can they do it consistently? Consistency obviously has been, a problem for the Mountaineers.
Yeah, Jordan Brooks is kind of the heartbeat of that defense, their linebacker. He leads the team in tackles, leads the team in sacks. Not overly aggressive. This is a defense that only blitzes around 27% of the time, around 10 times per game. They're not going to come at you. They're going to kind of make you earn it in a sense. So West Virginia's going to have to try to string together some drives, and when it's there, hit some big plays. Who's going to play quarterback? I think that's an interesting question. I think Austin Kendall starts this game no matter what. Will he finish it? That's the question. I think that's going to depend entirely on Mr. Kendall's shoulders. If he goes out and plays effective, I think he stays in. If he struggles, I think at that point, Neil Brown has the redshirt rule in his pocket. You can look at some other options, namely Jarrett Dagey, which I'm sure we'll get to in our question section later because we do every week. But what's West Virginia going to do offensively? What's this team's identity? We're 8 games into this season, and I don't think there is one.
No, there really isn't. We've seen them. They've had some highs, but mostly lows when it comes to the pass and run games. But for West Virginia, you can't be one dimensional. We've seen the inability to create explosive plays, and defenses will let up the box and stop the run. If you're West Virginia, you gotta get the run game going first of all. Can't have just 14 rushing yards in a game like they did against Baylor. Now, granted, a lot of those yards were lost on those 2 bad snaps from center Bryson Mays, but you got to get both games going. You got to be able to pass the ball, create some explosive plays, take some shots, but you also got to get the run game going as well. You
got to feel good with this team at home. We'll get into our predictions later, but this is a team at home that is coming off a big momentum. I guess if there's a such thing, it's almost an oxymoron, a momentum-building loss. It was what West Virginia did at Baylor. Yes, the end was gut-wrenching. You don't want to see things happen that way, but the way they played an inspired effort on the road against an undefeated team, that's a building block for the future. And I think that West Virginia will use that. We'll see who all plays. We got into our last edition. The injury list is, longer than the Declaration of Independence. But we're at that point in the year. Guys get banged up. We talked about this in fall camp. Now it's next man up. And whether that next man is a freshman or a walk-on or whatever, that's where West Virginia's at. Flipping the script a little bit, we're going to take your questions, as we always do. What do we got this week, Pat? I'm sure there's a Daggy question in there.
2.
There we go. Told you. Bingo.
And the funny thing is, I only got 3 questions. So 2 of our 3 questions to deal with Jarrett Daggy. So first question, how many snaps will Daggy get on Saturday?
I think that entirely depends on Austin Kendall. I really do. I don't think they come in and maybe they give him a series or 2. It's something Sean Reagan talked about even in fall camp. They like to get their backup guys a series or 2. You haven't seen that play out much once the games start. And typically that's what happens. You want to get your guy reps, especially when it's a new starter. I think it really does. We're to the point in the season where Austin Kendall is there's so much trouble on offense. I don't want to put it squarely on his shoulders, but he's plateaued a bit. You have him playing at a certain level, and he's not really necessarily getting any better. If it continues to do that, especially in a winnable game at home, this team still is playing for a bowl game. It might not seem like it. A 4-game losing streak will make you forget about a lot of positive things, but there's still a bowl game on the table. If they can find a way to get 3 of these last 4 games, hey, you can even go to a bowl game at 5-7 at some points. So it's still on the table. Can they find that, and what's going to be the answer there?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see, like you said, Keenan. I think it will, whether or not how much Daggy plays will depend on just Kendall's performance, and also interested to see, the one name that was also brought up was Trey Lowe. How many snaps does he get? Do they mix, both Daggy and Trey Lowe in? But I mean, I think. Like you said, Keenan, I think it'll just depend on the offenses, their momentum, their rhythm, what their approach is offensively. Can Kendall make some plays? But like you said, I think around him, he's plateaued a bit, yeah, but he needs the players around him to play better as well. He can't have drop passes. You got to be able to get the run game going, but it's still a collective effort from the offense.
I do think no matter what Jarrett Daggy does, if he does see time, it's not going to live up to expectations because I don't think I've ever seen expectations this high.
Now, next question, follow-up question, the second Daggy question. Speaking of Daggy, how would you compare the team around him at Bowling Green versus the team around him here? Should he play, and how would that impact his statistics at West Virginia?
He was on a bad Bowling Green team, so even if you take into effect that, it's Power 5 to Bowling Green. They were bad. West Virginia's middling right now. Could be trending towards bad with a couple more losses. So I'd say it's West Virginia has more talent. I'm not sure about the offensive line. When I asked our Bowling Green writer about him, I talked more about the skill position players and what he was as a quarterback. Didn't really ask about the offensive line. Maybe I should have. That would have become really handy at this point. But I think West Virginia's a little bit hamstrung with what they have up front. It might sound like an excuse because that's a word that people like to throw around anytime you logically explain something, but freshman offensive linemen in Power 5 conferences just don't work more often than not.
Now, our final question here in the world of college football recruiting. What is the status for Isaiah Johnson? When is the first junior day for 2021?
Well, Isaiah Johnson's taking his time. He is a 2021 cornerback from Bluefield. He's going to have a lot of offers. West Virginia, the trick there is getting him back on campus. He hasn't been back in a while. I think that's the key. If you can get him back on campus, you have a chance. I think of the 3 in-state guys right now, if I had to rank them, he'd be the least likely. But recruiting changes fast, guys.
Never know.
You never know. I think you got to stay on those guys. I don't think the way they're recruiting him is an issue necessarily. I just think that he's got his eyes on a few other schools right now. But as you've seen with other players, as this process goes, even like Dante Stills, some guys like that, sometimes it drifts back towards Morgantown. And has for the second part of that, the junior day, I almost forgot about that question. It's been a long day. The junior day, that's not going to be till probably, I'd say January, maybe February. You'll probably have a couple. The way this staff did their first year is they had a few junior days. So they had 2, and I think it was 2 in February, 2 in March, and then they had the spring game, of course, to bring some kids out. So I think this is going to be a very, very active cycle. You're going to see West Virginia all over the place getting recruits. If you're paying attention to our message board right now, either Vernon or I are posting a new offer. It seems like every couple hours, and most of them are 2021. That's going to be the class they hit really hard and try to address a lot of needs moving forward. You'll build your base of what this program is going to be with the remainder of this 2020 class, and especially the 2021 class. There we go. Yeah. 3 questions. That was quick. Usually that's a long segment. But speaking of recruiting, though, I do think that this weekend will be interesting to watch. You're getting late in the year. I know that Neil Brown said he doesn't want to use official visits for games, but this late in the year, I think you should always keep your eye out for that. It'll be interesting to see who makes it, even if they're not official visits, because we're getting near that time where guys are going to start making decisions. Clock's ticking. December is going to be here before you know it. You don't have that long layoff, the dead period, all that stuff you used to have before you were forced to make a decision. Most guys are going to sign in December. West Virginia still has roughly 9-10 spots to fill, so it's going to be interesting to see who they get and who's all in the mix, because this list is changing right now, and West Virginia has a lot of concerns that they need to fill, and it's about what they do with what's left. Yeah. As for prediction time, Pat, I'm gonna give you the floor.
Oh,
there you go.
Thank you, Senator Cummings.
Senator, Governor.
I am going to take West Virginia in this game to bounce back and snap that 4-game losing streak. I'm going to take West Virginia by a score of 27-21. I really do think that, coming back home for the first time in a few weeks, I don't know. I really just feel like this is their game to rebound. This is a beatable Texas Tech team, but at the same time, offensively, that's going to be the biggest focus for me. Is can they create it? Can they create some of those explosive plays? Can they get the run game going? I'm confident that I think at some point they'll get it going, but I really feel like they'll do just enough. I think they'll take advantage of one or two explosive plays there in the second half that will really change the game around. And I feel like if that defensive line, that front seven, if they're able to disrupt and get some pressure on Jet Duffy and disrupt their run game as well, I really feel like West Virginia can be successful in this one.
Yeah, I have West Virginia winning this game too. I think the streak is over. West Virginia finds a way into the win column, 28-17. I'm a believer in the defense. I really do. I know we've talked about some of the issues, but I think the way they played against Baylor is kind of a blueprint for what you'll probably see the rest of the year.
Very promising, yeah.
Yeah, and I think you'll see more of that, 3 safety look as opposed to 3 linebackers because they're so short. Some of this is going to depend on who plays and who doesn't. I think when you get so far down the depth chart, it starts to become a little bit of a concern. But I like West Virginia at home. I think it's going to be a good environment. I think West Virginia is going to be ready to play. They kind of realize they got to win this one. If you don't win this one, it's not looking good in a hurry. But I got West Virginia at home. I think they're going to take care of business.
I mean, like we said, the schedule does not get any easier. They went through that tough October slate. Like I said, this is a very winnable game here at home, but then you got to go on the road at Kansas State still, got to go on the road to TCU to finish off the season. Then sandwiched in between there, you got the final home game against Oklahoma State, which is never an easy task.
Yeah, the Big 12 is not an easy schedule. I don't see anyone can look at that schedule and say it's easy. Those are tough games every week, especially for a team that's, still kind of trying to find its way.
Still trusting the climb.
Yeah, there you go. We got it in there. We always seem to get it in every show. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, if you like what we've done before, and if you haven't already, go ahead and hit subscribe. We do recommend you come back. I hope you enjoyed it. Excuse my lapse there a few times, but it's been a long week. But thank you for tuning in once again. Now, this is another episode of Musings from the Mountains.